Hi, welcome to This Week in Data, your guide to the modern data culture, brought to you by Pragmatic Works. My name is Devin Knight.
And I'm Adam Jorgensen. In today's episode, we're going to talk to you about debunking some very popular cloud myths. There's a lot of people are moving to the cloud. They can, they can't. They got all these reasons, and there's a lot of things people misunderstand about what it means to move to the cloud. So, but first, before we get into that, like every week, we have some news stories.
Oh, great. I love this.
Yes. So, do you have $14 billion, Devin?
I do not.
I do not either. We might have to go halvesies to help Apple because they owe $14 billion.
Whoa.
To the EU for taxes.
Whoa, that's no small chunk.
The EU just issued a release or a judgment saying, it feels very judgy, saying that basically Ireland allowed Apple to ignore EU tax regulations, which is pretty crazy. Apple has said, no, we're not paying that. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be some kind of legal battle ensuing immediately. But what they did was really crazy to me. So, and this is a pretty popular practice for a lot of very large companies. You hear about these big companies that don't pay taxes and that kind of thing. And without getting into all the political, sides of it, really what happens is they take their IP, their intellectual property, and they create it or they give it to a subsidiary in a foreign country like Ireland, for example, right? And then they lease that IP to a subsidiary in a country like Bermuda, where there's no corporate tax. And then Bermuda does whatever it needs to do with the IP, but basically all the profit that's made by the company in Ireland is gotten rid of because it's paid in royalties over to that company in Bermuda.
Wow.
And so as they, play that sort of shell game, it basically wipes out any profit from any entity in a country that would have to pay taxes. And so the EU is saying, you can't do that. We have laws against that, and so Apple's going to have to fight that.
Wow, it does make you wonder how many companies are doing this. I'm sure it's not just Apple.
It's a lot.
Yeah, Apple didn't invent this idea.
No.
I can't imagine how many other companies are out there that are working the system.
So I know 4 of them because they were in this article.
Okay.
So Microsoft does it.
Okay.
GE does it. And then Samsung does it as well. Wow. So I'm sure that there's a broad variety of large-scale companies who it's worth it because they make so much money. Pragmatic Works is going to start doing this next year.
Don't admit that.
with our Bermuda entity in Pragmatic Works. But it's one, it's kind of crazy that they've been able to figure all that out. But 2, it's going to be interesting to see how Apple handles all this.
Wow. That's interesting.
So let's switch from Apple over to Microsoft, and they are kind of putting a little dig into Apple this week. So they have a new commercial for the Surface Book, and I have a Surface Book. I really like it. You've had a Surface in the past. It's been a great machine. But I also have a MacBook Pro, and I also really like my MacBook Pro, so I'm kind of, house divided, but it's really just me. But Microsoft wrote a jingle for their ad.
Wait a minute. Can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yes.
Is this the one that has a guy wearing a cat mask?
I believe so.
Oh my gosh.
So they wrote a jingle for the ad, and the entire jingle is about why the Surface is better than the MacBook.
Okay.
So if you wrote a song about your competitor, and the whole song is basically why they're better. And so it focuses on things like, they have the touch capability, and they have the pen, and they have all these, other types of things where I'm sure Apple would say, well, we have the iPad Pro, and it does this and that. Personally, I think the Surface and the Surface Book are way better than the iPad Pro for day-to-day use.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But, but it's pretty crazy. So I want to know from you, what's the next song that Microsoft should write? Who should they go after next?
Did they write, I'm thinking like gaming systems, did they write a PlayStation jingle?
Oh, that would be cool.
They're so, or we talked about they buying LinkedIn, maybe they write a Facebook jingle.
Yes, that would be interesting.
Man, there's so many, or they have OneDrive, maybe, or they do
like
Dropbox.
Dropbox.
Yeah, something like Google Drive.
Yeah.
That's funny. They have so many competitors, it's so big. But it's funny that if you're going to write a jingle, why not just write a jingle about how great your product is alone?
I think they're feeling that, that competitive pressure. They want to just, leapfrog Apple in that enterprise market and the consumer market.
And to be honest, I agree with you. For day-to-day use, the Surface Book and the Surface, way, way better, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
So you guys might disagree. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Just don't be mean. This is the internet. People are mean.
The internet. And we just riled them all up. Yeah. We just said basically one whole thing is better than this other whole thing.
This is on YouTube, right?
Ready, internet, go.
Right.
I think YouTube just broke.
Yeah.
So you don't have a Samsung phone, do you?
I do not.
We both have iPhones, correct?
Speaking of making fun of it, yeah, we have iPhones. Right?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to rile everybody up today.
Yeah.
That's probably good because your iPhone has never exploded on your nightstand in the middle of the night, right?
Not that I can recall.
Don't buy a Samsung.
Okay.
Because apparently the new Samsung Galaxy 7, the Galaxy Note, has a tendency, and by tendency I mean all of the early units have done this, they exploded while they were charging.
Wow.
Now, to be fair to Samsung, most smartphone manufacturers have had this problem. BGR.com reported it initially, but the iPhone originally had this problem, and it seems like anytime somebody's designing a new battery form factor or something, they got to go through some testing. But Samsung did ship out pre-order units to some testers and that kind of thing, and that's where it was happening. This didn't happen in the lab.
Wow.
So they've suspended shipments, and they're trying to figure it out as we go. So some pretty crazy things. Apple's got too much money. Microsoft's singing songs making fun of them, and Samsung has exploding phones. It's been a pretty busy week in the news, Devin.
Absolutely, and those are always fun stories. I love to hear stuff like that. Makes you wonder too, from the battery perspective. You always hear things like, always use the approved battery charger and things like that. Does that affect it? And I'm sure in this case it was just going to happen regardless, but it always makes you wonder how those things impact it.
But wouldn't you love to see like somebody writes in and says, "Dear customer support, I'm having a problem with my phone
and my house,"
and then you go to the drop down for what's your problem, and it's like billing and support, technical support. You're like, where does exploding fit? There's no category for blew up my nightstand.
Yeah, and burned down my house.
Right.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's been a pretty busy week in the news, but I think those are a pretty good recap for this week.
Yeah. So our main topic then for this episode is all going to be about debunking some of the most popular cloud myths.
Oh, I hear them all the time, Devin.
We have a lot of these conversations, right?
We do. We have so many.
So yeah, start me off. What's the first one you have for me?
So I have 3.
Okay.
And so the first one is that the cloud is expensive.
Okay.
So people think, well, I already own all these servers. Why would I go to the cloud and start paying someone else?
Okay.
And so that's a logical question. If you just bought a whole bunch of brand new hardware, maybe it's not the right time for you to begin to move to the cloud. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, moving to the cloud is not just about price. It's about capability and about scale. Most data centers that I know are already oversubscribed. Mm-hmm. Most customers we go talk to, we say, well, we're going to need 3 VMs to start this project. And they go, oh, no, we can't get more VMs. Or the SAN's already at capacity. Or I can't go talk to the storage guy because he lives under a bridge and he's very angry, right? So there's all of these conversations, and ultimately the cloud is about accelerating your business. Right. And so, you really do wind up paying significantly less in most cases than you do to run it on premise. But the key is when it comes to cost in the cloud, you pay for what you use. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a big, 80 core server for your data warehouse, just because at month end you need all 80 of those cores, you're paying for that all 30 days of the month, right? But in the cloud, we can scale up at the end of the month and then scale way back down. And so we really, in some cases, we have one customer who was running an $850,000 to $900,000 top tier enterprise server, and they've cut the price of running that data warehouse just in infrastructure and equipment down by 92%.
Wow.
Because the only reason they had that server was for this big month-end batch.
Wow.
That once we re-architected that process, it saved them an enormous amount of money. It also helps when your servers come up on your depreciation. Most of the time, we just sort of shove them off to dev, or dev sort of gets the hand-me-downs, the consignment shop of the data center, right? And most of the time, that's okay. But wouldn't you rather have developers that can spin up an environment quickly, do some testing, do some of that kind of thing? So it's not just about cost. And if you're only looking at cost one-dimensionally, the cloud's probably still going to win. But even if it doesn't in your unique scenario, the other benefits typically far outweigh it. Yeah,
and you make a good point about how you can easily ramp things up when you need it, ramp things down. What are some of the things that when you talk about expenses, that have surprisingly low cost that people may not know in the cloud?
Storage.
Yeah.
Storage is so cheap. It's a race to the bottom. And the other thing is you're getting into an environment in the cloud that's highly competitive.
Right.
And so if Amazon drops their price, Microsoft's going to drop their price. If Microsoft drops their price, Amazon's going to drop theirs. So it's this constant back and forth where you benefit. Because you're the one who's paying. So if you're paying, a few cents a gig for storage and that drops to 1 cent a gig, and you've got 49 terabytes of storage, your price just dropped 50%.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of economies of scale that we're talking about. So you can afford to buy faster storage or larger servers for a lot less money. The other thing is, things like networking and authentication and tertiary services that you need to make these things work. They're all designed to not break the bank, to not push you out of a solution. They're designed to be, very manageable cost. So it's a pretty exciting time to be making the change.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll get to some of the other ones. So let's get to the second one here. What's your second cloud myth that you want to bust?
Security. So we just did a cloud webinar this past week.
Okay.
And one of the questions we asked in our poll, we do a couple polls to learn about the audience ahead of time, to try to help them a little bit more. And one of the questions we asked was, what are the reasons you haven't moved to the cloud?
Okay.
Number one was, we don't think it's secure enough. And so we are going to do a lot more content around cloud security because specifically talking about Azure and Microsoft's cloud, nobody is immune from a hack. Right? There is no internet-connected environment that's 100% immune. But I can tell you, Microsoft has an army of people called their cyber defense network. Do you have a cyber defense network? Do you have advanced machine learning algorithms that are constantly looking at the traffic and the patterns and the access? Even in regular Azure SQL database, just a lowly first tier Azure SQL database, we can turn on something called threat detection, which scans the database for things like SQL injection attacks. It scans for, anomalous access from different firewall ports and things like that. It's incredibly powerful and very cool, and you can't really get that in your own data center. And the physical security of your data in those data centers, I've been to an Azure data center. The TSA has nothing on these guys. I can tell you, the security is very tight. The physical data is very secure. And Microsoft has an army of people doing everything they can to protect not only your data, but to keep it encrypted, secure. And Microsoft's the only cloud with Azure that passed the EU's privacy and security standards, right? So Amazon hasn't done that yet. I'm sure they're working on it, and they will eventually.
Yeah.
But, the public cloud is a safe place to be.
They even have one specifically for government as well,
They
right?
do, yeah. They have one specifically for government. They've built one specifically for countries. So China, for example, has very specific restrictions and limitations on what can come in and out of the country. And so they've managed to do that across the EU and across China because it's a big focus for them. They want you to be able to have confidence in it. So we believe that most situations, we hear a lot of times, well, we're in financial services, we can't put our data there. Yes, you can. We're in healthcare, we can't put our data there. Yes, you can. Great first question to ask somebody when they ask you about security is, where's your email stored?
Probably already in the cloud.
Probably already in the cloud somewhere. So
if you're using Office 365 in some way, you have information in the cloud, and I'm sure everything that goes through email, especially from things we talk about right now,
it's super confidential, right? I'm sure the CEO never makes a comment to the CFO about anything. But I think from a concern standpoint, security is one of the bigger ones, and certainly we don't want to be dismissive about it, like it's automatically secure and we don't have to think about it. But with proper planning and the right architecture and the right insight, it can be incredibly secure, much more secure than an on-premise solution.
Just one more thought on this. So where can people go to, I believe it's called Microsoft Trust Center, is that where they can go look and see exactly what they're doing?
Yeah, that's a great tip for the audience, Devin. So the Microsoft Trust Center, if you just punch that into your search engine, it'll take you right there. That's where Microsoft has all of their certifications, explanations about all their security features. You can contact a Microsoft security specialist for the cloud right through that portal. And they'll help you get squared away. Or you can certainly contact us here at Pragmatic Works, and we're happy to help you talk through any security concerns or challenges you're trying to address.
Great. So what's our next myth?
That everybody's going to lose their job.
Oh,
the cloud's coming. We don't need any more DBAs. We don't need any more sysadmins.
I heard
developers
so much
are going away
when it became the first big thing. When it was initial, it was huge.
And I don't think the cloud providers helped with this, right? Because they kind of said, we're going to automate all of these things and your expenses are going to go down. And I think people think what they meant by expenses were people, because people are expensive.
Right.
But what they're talking about is they've automated things like backups, maintenance, patching, the kind of stuff that you really don't want your team spending time on anyway.
And first of all, if they don't already automate those things, there's probably a bigger problem.
That's true. That's very true. Somebody told me once, a former DBA friend of mine, he's a former DBA, he's not a former friend, he's still my friend, that basically if a production DBA couldn't automate 95% of their initial workload, they shouldn't be a production DBA. Because then they need to be able to take on things like planning and performance tuning and architecture that we need their insight and their knowledge, not only their technical knowledge, but their knowledge about how the business runs and how the products and programs actually work and use the database and how they need to use the database. A data professional is an incredibly crucial part of a team that's managing, building, developing applications across whether it's on-premise, hybrid, or in the cloud. And those jobs aren't going anywhere. Matter of fact, as we get more and more features and more integration, the people who are adapting and learning, those lifelong learners, those folks who continue to learn what it means to go from being an administrator on premise to running a hybrid environment, to running things in the cloud and architecting things, those people are going to have very exciting and very good jobs for a long time.
Yeah, there's probably something to be said too for the amount of integration you have to do with existing systems that you have, because you're not, no one's saying put everything in the cloud, everything in the cloud right
tomorrow.
Now. Right. So there's always going to be a hybrid approach. You always have other vendor applications that you're using right now, and so there's going to be still that need to understand how these things integrate together. How do you work these systems better together and architect it so they work well together?
Right. We're not going to be able to architect people out of a solution.
No.
That's not ever the goal, and I think that's important for everybody to realize. Yeah. And if you don't see the future of your role as you look forward into a cloud world, you really need to think about where you're making your investments, from your own professional development. So learn about these new technologies, learn how they could help your company, and as you're doing that, you're going to be pretty surprised at how that role is embraced.
Yeah, and I think it's just from our perspective, you can probably give a little bit of insight here of how much emphasis we put on it at Pragmatic Works. Pragmatic Works. Right. We did a whole Summer of Azure kind of ramp up for folks as well, right?
We did. I mean, we've had some incredibly talented Azure architects and folks like that helping customers for months now, actually since last year. But as we are seeing the volume of customers ramp up, even folks who typically do things like BI development with ETL and reports have to be able to do those things in the cloud.
Yep.
Everybody from every level of consultant in every specialty has to be able to deliver those things in the cloud. Everything from Oracle to big data solutions to SQL Server to SQL Server BI, Power BI, and there's so much there. So we identified about 14 to 15 Azure services or Azure products or features that we know are the most exciting for our customers and the ones we work with the most. And we took our internal SMEs, our subject matter experts, and they volunteered to build out some training guides and some kind of quick start ramp up guides and pull all the resources together and help the team get started. So our professional development focus is on getting the whole team ready and excited to deploy anything we need to deploy in a cloud or hybrid world, because that's where we believe everything is going.
Yeah, so that's a great way to connect with us too. If you're looking for some of those kind of services, normally you'll bring this up again later, but connect with us. We have the expertise. We're already doing it. This is just a matter of getting those folks that were more focused on other areas ramped up on Azure as well.
Right.
So you mentioned earlier you have a bonus myth. What's the bonus myth?
I did.
You did?
Oh boy. That was my secret one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They say, so a lot of people say, I'm gonna do my Trumpism today.
Oh.
Many people are saying that getting to the cloud is difficult. So
frankly,
I don't have my red hat. That getting to the cloud is difficult, and I think that's another myth. I think that's a misconception. I think maybe some people have tried, and they needed to be able to do some more PowerShell than they were comfortable with, or they didn't understand how the services architected together. Because some of that can be a little tricky the first couple times you do it, and so if you're trying to do it an hour a day in between all of your other things, that can be very, very challenging. It's one of the reasons that we have some things in place to help customers, get ramped up quickly, grow that confidence level, right?
Yeah.
But it's easier than a lot of other migrations when you really get down to it, because Microsoft has built a lot of tools to enable you to get up into Azure quickly, everything from express route network appliances to rapidly compress and move data, store simple, things like that, all the way through to just migration assistance and software tooling and that type of thing. There is a lot of support and a lot of resources and the patterns for taking your application, pretty much whatever you're running. It doesn't even matter. It could be open source, could be anything. And moving that into the cloud exists because people have been doing it long enough now where we've figured out pretty much majority of the patterns and what works and what doesn't and the best practices. And so, where we can really help, I think, is when we go in and customers kind of know what they need to do, where they want to go. because ideally we've already worked with them in that capacity.
Right.
But then we actually can do an assessment and help them figure out, what is that going to take? And typically inside of 30 days, you can move a lot of your environment up into Azure.
What do you see some people doing their first investment? What's their first step into the cloud? There's their first step into the water there. What do they do?
It's probably tied between two, Devin. So the first one is a greenfield application. So they probably want to try something like analytics or take some streaming data, something that the cloud is really built for that you really, maybe you could do it on premise, but it would still mean new build out and et cetera, right? And it's typically a fast moving business project. So they want to be able to swipe that credit card in Azure, get an account, get set up, get rolling all within a period of a couple of hours rather than putting PO orders in for servers and things like that, right? So greenfield applications are one. The other one is data center modernization. So looking at how do we move some of the databases to the cloud? How do we move some of our web servers to the cloud? How do we make the cloud part of our high availability or business continuity strategy? And how do we begin to leverage things like StretchDB?
Oh, yeah.
So how do we scale on demand, looking at SQL 2016? So we have a lot of customers that are upgrading to SQL 2016 and at the same time looking at doing things with the cloud because of that amazing integration between SQL 2016 and all of the Azure services and products.
Yeah, and another thing you said earlier that, again, a lot of people don't even think about that they're already doing in the cloud is things like Office 365 and SaaS providers that they're already using.
Right,
So,
Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics.
Yeah, there's a ton of them out there. You guys are probably using some form of a SaaS provider
Netflix.
now. Yeah,
they're obviously using that at work.
Yeah. So
I've seen your browser history.
So where can they learn more, Adam? What are we doing with cloud right now?
Yeah, I mean, come check us out at pragmaticworks.com. We'll have a form on the blog at blog.pragmaticworks.com. We do everything from cloud assessments to design sessions to just a call to say, hey, here's what we're trying to do, and let's have a friendly conversation with some really smart people from Pragmatic Works and some really smart people from your company.
Yeah.
And let's help you figure out where you're going. There's no hard push. We just want to make sure you're enabled. That's part of the reason we do all this extra free content, just to make sure that you have resources to go to that don't require paying out up front.
Yeah, and I think we're also going to have a follow-up blog as well on cloud myths that
we are
going to read on as well and learn more about.
We have more than four. Well, I had three. I have four really today.
Yeah.
But we have even more coming up in the blog. And so we'd love to talk to you more about how we can help assess your environment, help you take the next steps forward. We'd also love to hear about what your experience is with the cloud. So have you tried going to the cloud yet? What's that been like for you? Or what are you afraid of? Are these myths ones that you hear around your company?
Right.
What's going on in your world? We'd really love to know that. So please put that in the comments for us.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear from you, like Adam said. And that's it for this episode. We hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, everybody.